Perfect. Okay, hello everyone again. My name is Hadil Elkhatib. I'm a certified gut health coach, and I'm also the founder of a few healthy leading award concepts called the Broth Lab, the Rotisserie, and Kacha Matcha. And I'm very pumped up today to be amongst these amazing women panelists. After a career shift myself, I moved from corporate HR, trading suits and recruits to ancestral superfoods. And I would love to talk more about my journey some other time, because today we will be jumping straight into nutrition and business. So our first panelist today is Mirna Sabbagh. She's a good friend of mine, and she's a dietitian and a lactation consultant with her decade of experience. Her content on social media is phenomenal, making healthy eating kids so much fun, not just for kids, but also for parents. We also have Qadreya, the founder of Bumblebee Baby Food. I don't know if you've been at the kiosks out there. The concept is there as well. And she created the brand after noticing a gap in the market. Funny enough, I met Qadreya at Shark Tank, where we both had the interest of a shark that was interested in investing in both our companies. And ever since then, we kicked off. Finally, we have Dina AlHajji. Dina specializes in eating psychology and sports nutrition, helping people balance between mental wellness and fitness. I'm very happy to see you here, Dina, all the way.
5:30 session started. Please head to the auditorium or the seminar. The workshop is full, but please go ahead to the auditorium or the seminar. Thank you.
And that as well. So I'm very happy to be meeting Dina. She flew all the way from Amman. So let's give them all a round of applause. Can you all hear me? Okay. So we'll start our question by a very personal one. Can each of you share your own personal story of what led you to focus on nutrition and wellness? Yes.
Thing? Is it on? For me, actually, it started off as a career choice, to be very honest. I was like, okay, I want to learn something, and I don't want to work 9 to 5. I want to control my schedule. Honest to God, that's how it started. And then I got into nutrition, even though I wasn't healthy before. And then when I got into it, I was so in love and fascinated that there's so much about nutrition that we didn't know, and I didn't know even as an educated person. And it happened when I did nutrition that I was pregnant. It was my second degree, and I was pregnant. And then anything that anyone taught about nutrition during the class, about weight loss, everyone was fascinated. But for me, it was all about the child nutrition that was fascinating. I couldn't get over the fact that what you do, you know, what you eat even when you're pregnant can impact a child's health when they're 40. And what you do in terms of milk or breastfeeding or not, or what you do in terms of weaning, the baby food can impact you for life. So for that reason, I decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make this my mission. And I'm going to educate myself on everything child nutrition related, and hopefully educate other moms. And I found it harder to apply than it is to learn, but alhamdulillah, it's been a tough journey. But I think I've succeeded, or I'm trying to succeed in creating that education that is very dear to my heart and is very important.
I think you truly have. And it's fascinating how when you become a mother, your whole perception of food changes, right? It's never just about what you eat, it's how it impacts everyone around you. Qadreya, do you want to share your story of what led you to create Bumblebee?
Sure. When I first started, I was actually babysitting ولد صديقتي. I was feeding him a supermarket pack, and I realized that it was produced 7 months ago. So imagine you're feeding your baby something before he was even born. So that's when I asked my other mom friends, كلهم عندهم نفس المشكلة. That's when I realized that there was a gap in the market. So this is when I started to cook more, healthy meals and send it to my friends, and they loved it, and they encouraged me to start the business. So this is basically how the idea started.
Amazing. And also, if you're not a mom, how it can really impact the community. So it's not necessarily just being a mother. Dina, do you want to share?
Yeah, so I started في حياتي السابقة in the corporate world. So I used to do consulting, I used to travel 5 days a week, go back home 2 weeks, and it was eye-opening for me because for the first couple of years of that, I realized this is definitely not what I want to do. And then it took some time to trust my gut, literally. I started to see what I can do. I knew what I loved. I loved nutrition. I loved moving. I loved being healthy. And I always tell my friends, I used to give unsolicited advice to all my colleagues. At work, I used to give them, like workout advice, nutrition stuff, and I was like, guys, this is not backed by anything. I'm just doing me حاليا. Don't trust me. But now you can. لأنه I found the light. I got certified in sports nutrition first, and then eating psychology after that. I thought it was a good balance between the two. And here I am today.
Amazing. We're so happy you're with us today. So you come from very diverse but very interrelated domains. From your experience in your specialty, what are specific or one big challenge that you've seen today when it comes to educating parents about feeding their children in the UAE or in the Arab world? Please.
شوفي, it's sometimes hard to pinpoint one big thing, but I think the sentiment of people that I see and advise is that the amount of misinformation that we have today with social media, every Instagram account you see بيعطيكي معلومة غير. Eat carbs, don't eat carbs, go gluten-free, gluten is good for you. A couple of years ago, cholesterol was like the thing, fat وكوليسترول ولا وهلا طلع لا الموضوع تمام وأمورك منيحة. It's hard as a human and especially as a mom and a caregiver to realize what should I trust here and شو هي المعلومة اللي أنا بدي أخذها من this bombardment of information that we have every day.
So how do we overcome it?
شوفي, I think there is a responsibility on women, moms, and caregivers to step outside شوي from the social media and the fads and all these things. I always tell moms, go back to your roots. يعني بتقولي أنا ما بعرف my kids و should I go nut free or should I go this? So of course there are people who have allergies وهيك, but I think over-emphasizing the issues that don't yet exist with our kids is a problem. I always tell them, إيش كانت ستك تعمل? You know, I don't think there was like the strict food regimen that our grandparents used with our parents and their grandparents, but everything was pure and clean and good. It was done with love and well-intentioned, so it would reap good results. I always tell moms, take a step back, chill. يعني, don't stress out too much. You're not trying to be the perfect mom. ودائما بحكي إنه good enough is so much better than perfect, because good enough is sustainable. Perfection absolutely is not. So you can do perfect for a couple of days, but you can do good enough for the rest of your life.
Agreed. Mirna, do you have something to add?
So I feel like from what you were talking about earlier, Hadil, that there's a lot of focus nowadays on what is healthy, how do I give my child the ultimate nutrition, what do I do, exactly like Dina's saying. And with social media now, we believe that we need to be giving our kids drumsticks and very fresh chicken liver and kale and quinoa and all of these things, when in fact, if you go back to your roots, the simplest foods on earth are the best foods. And I think there's a notion that we took so much over the years from Western countries or advanced countries. And you know what? They've taken so much from us. They've tried, today, especially as a Lebanese Palestinian, today I say they took so much from us. They tried to take our lands. They tried to take our culture. They've been inspired by us. They tried so hard to take everything from our food. Luckily, they only managed to take hummus, and they didn't do it well. So I like to say, when it comes down to nutritional education, let them keep their quinoa and their kale, and let us keep our, za'atar and burghul, لأنه it's so much healthier. So I think that's really the main focus that I like to say, that when it comes down to our households, we know so much more than they do. They don't even know what to do with our ingredients. They'll sprinkle it on top of a salad. So they really don't know. So I think we can teach, not learn from them when it comes down to nutrition.
Agreed. And we have our own DNA composition to really assimilate and digest food that other cultures can't. So it really all has to come down to your own DNA, to your own cultural background, to reposition that ancestral superfood. I talk a lot about, through my concepts, about ancestral superfoods and how they have major healing benefits on us. What could be healing to me or to my child may not be for another culture, for another family, for a different generation. So it's so important to step back, like Dina said, to chill, take the back seat, and like Mirna said, to look at really what works for me rather than just copy the next trend or next amazing chef recipe that was shared from another culture. Qadreya, have you tried to implement some of these different cultural superfoods or meals in Bumblebee?
As you know, احنا في الإمارات we live in such a diverse culture. We're influenced, our food is influenced by all around the world. يعني احنا في بيتنا مثلا عندنا في الإمارات we eat everything. مثلا ناكل pasta, ناكل biryani, butter chicken, everything that there is. So in that sense, making healthy choices is not very challenging. And it's not it's not as difficult as you think. For example, احنا مثلا one meal that we're developing now at Bumblebee with collaboration with actually the broth lab is called Dawood Basha. As you know, it's Arabic. The way that we made it healthier was to actually cook العيش مع الbone broth that the broth lab has. And this way العيش نفسه, instead of just being a carb, it has all the nutrients from the bone, right? It has all the vegetables, everything that the child needs to grow. So though there are simple ways إن أنتوا تقدرون, you eat the same thing that you want. You don't have to compromise on your foods اللي أنتوا تحبونه, but just make healthier swaps. As you can say, مثلا oil, instead of cooking with vegetable oil, you can just cook it with olive oil or coconut oil. You don't have to compromise on your food to make it healthy.
I love that, and I love that we're collaborating and we're doing the Dawood Basha. I definitely want to taste that, not before my kids. I want to dwell back into the cultural considerations, please, because I think it's such a hot topic. It's so important to talk about how many factors in the Middle East, particularly in the UAE and in other Levant areas, impact the way us as parents approach feeding our children. Can you touch base on that, Dina? From your experience with eating psychology and the clients, majority of them being parents, how do you see that our cultural norms really affect how parents are taking your advice in terms of what cultural norms they should impact in their household?
Yeah, definitely. شوفي, culturally we are super rich and we are very diverse and our tables are very well-rounded. We don't have an issue of adding more vegetables. We just need to go back to our roots فعليا, and we have the fasulya, we have the bamia, we have the stews, we have the yakhanis, ملوخية, superfood apparently, بس إنه we're born into these things. Again, زي ما ميرنا كانت عم تحكي, I think we owe it to ourselves and our kids to really instill these healthy but also very culturally relevant things to our tables. وطبعا there are issues, there are picky eaters, there are this, there are that, and we can work with our kids. We can expose them at a younger age. Let's not try to نحصر their horizon when it comes to food and nutrition. And kids will surprise you. A lot of advice I give to parents when they tell me والله أنا ابني ما بياكل إشي. بعمل له رز, حتى هلأ صار رز شعرية ما بحب. So a big piece of advice that I like to give parents is involve your kids in the cooking and purchasing of your produce. كتير بتفرق. Take your kid to the supermarket. احكي له نقي خضار. Whatever it is. Involve them in the cooking process. حطوهم جنبكم بالمطبخ. يقطعوا. Do whatever they want. يخبصوا, يوسخوا. It's fine.
Yeah.
It needs to be an all-inclusive environment for your kids to, one, connect, to feel like it's something relevant. He's eating something he was involved in. مش والله ماما إيش على المنيو اليوم لا مش عاجبني عرفتي those we need to put some effort, and it's hard and easy to do, by the way, لأنه I understand moms are busy, women in general, whether you're working, whether or not, it's like life takes you. The good news, and you have amazing options now, like, you know, Bumblebee and stuff like that, that can actually help you give your kids healthy, good options that are culturally relevant. وبترتاحي. But at the same time, you need to, as a caregiver and a mom, put in the effort to really make your meals and your food not just nutritious, but also nourishing. I always tell moms, nourishment trumps nutrition in a lot of ways. After a game or after a tough day, if you're going out with the family for a pizza or an ice cream, that's a nourishing activity. It's fine. It doesn't always have to be, you know, لا هذا فيه سكر, this is more nutritionally balanced. Give yourself the room and the balance to make things as easy for you, but also have intent with your actions. Have intent with movie night, عم ناكل popcorn و chips. You know, it's not the best, but again, it's a nourishing activity. Your kids will enjoy this, and it will bring back more than it will take away.
But a lot of moms, don't you feel, have anxiety around meal times regardless? So they want to involve their kids with the supermarket grocery shopping or making the actual dinner on the table and eating as a family. But there's so much anxiety around feeding. لأنه ما بيعرفوا إذا الأكل that they actually made will be eaten. Or even if the kids get excited, they might say, oh yeah, they're excited one day, another day they don't want to prepare the food, they'd rather be doing something else. How can parents truly manage their own emotions around meal times, بنظرك? And how do they create a stress-free environment for their children so that they can have a proper healthy association around meal times?
شوفي أنا عندي بالبيت مجننتهم. Every time we sit on the table بقولهم guys, slowly and mindfully. Slowly and mindfully is my mantra. And slowly and mindfully really is, هي بلشت with around the meal table and just eating in general. But in all honesty, now it became my mantra in life.
هلا أول ما بيجوا بتقولي لهم easy,
slowly and mindfully.
Okay, and be very mindful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Slowly and mindfully بس عشان إنه it is eating slowly and eating mindfully.
Okay.
But also I can be mindful while eating all kinds of foods. عرفتي? So I'm eating a birthday cake. I might be like, do I really need it? But if I want it, I'm going to have it. But I'm going to have it with intent. I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to enjoy every single bite.
Yes, no guilt.
I'm not going to let guilt or whatever. أولادي birthday party أكل نص الcupcakes قبل ما. It's fine.
قبل ما يبلش العيد ميلاد.
It is totally fine because it is what it is. There are days where you can't control shit.
Okay.
And there are days where you can be a little more conscious. لا مسيطرة الkids والله أوف أكل الطبخة ممتاز. But us as Arabs, we have this this thing where like بدنا لازم تكمل صحنك، لازم تاكل آخر لقمة. رح تلحقك يوم القيامة. I always in my mind في رزة.
It's terrible.
في رزة عم تلحقني. And I'm like I need to get over this رزة, you know, like it's not. أنا my friends لما يكونوا معزومين عنا بقولها اسمعي رزاتك. بتقول لي دينا بقول خلص رزتين كليهم. So there is that, but at the end of the day we need to model what we want our kids to be. Kids are not great listeners, but they're great imitators. They will imitate you as a mom and a dad and whoever is modeling for them. They will imitate you. The way you do, they will do. If you start the meal with like positive intent, eating slowly and mindfully, أكل لقمتين شبع خليه يشبع. الحمد لله يا ربي. Today, especially إحنا, none of our kids رح يموتوا من الجوع. الحمد لله. So first, we need to put this in perspective. Second, we need to, as moms, I'm not a mom بس يعني, I will speak as a woman and an aunt that loves her nephews. We need to just make sure that we don't disconnect our kids from what it really means to eat. And I always tell them we need to bring back the connection between our mind and our bodies. إذا إحنا معودينهم ياكلوا خلاص شبعت، لا أنت ما شبعت، كمل صحنك. The connection between his gut and his mind, الشبع، الجوع, it would be completely severed.
Correct.
And the consequences, unfortunately, ببينوا بعدين.
Yeah, the gut-brain connection,
Exactly.
that axis is very tender.
We need to rebuild it من أول وجديد. It's just a conscious effort with these things.
Another question for you, Dina. Children often use food as self-soothing. I think we adults as well, we do that. So it's sort of like comfort food. But I'm feeling really down today. I want something as a comfort food. Children as well do feel the same way when it comes to food. And sometimes their choices aren't the best optimum nutritious choices. How do we maneuver as parents around that? Do we tell them, la, this is not healthy, this is not the best choice, even though we know there is some sort of an emotional connection? Or should we tweak it around making it maybe a healthier version where they still enjoy it? What is your take on that?
Shufi, this is tricky because there are obviously foods that are more nutritionally balanced and there are foods that are not. As a mom, you need to obviously balance the two. I think in general, moms put so much stress on themselves, and it's stress that they live with every single day. So when it comes to kids and navigating, humans are emotional eaters. Humans have emotions, and food directly reflects our emotions. In weddings, we celebrate with food. In funerals, we eat together. When we're happy, ناكل أكلة بنحبها. I know the biggest question with my family and all the families is إذا جاي حدا من برا إيش طابختي له? That's the first thing we ask.
Yeah,
so
hospitality
we love
is big when it comes to food in Arab world.
We show love with food and we appreciate with food. So emotions or food can never be disconnected. And I think we need to give ourselves the space to sometimes eat my emotions. It's okay. Today was a tough day. I will eat the sugar, but I will not feel guilty about it. I will eat it with intent and enjoy it to the maximum. The issue a lot of people face is that انت لما تاكلي a meal that you're not supposed to eat, food that we vilify, all these things that خلص احنا متعودين from like all this messaging إنه لا مش المفروض ومش المفروض. When you start eating it with the guilty association, you block your mind وبتقولي خلص رح آكل الكيكة صح ما لازم بس بدي. And this is one not mindful at all. And you will not notice أنا إمتى شبعت أو when did I have enough? Because sometimes I can have a full piece of cake and other times, you know what? 2 bites are enough. I'm satiated, مبسوطة. I got the fix that I needed. I don't need to finish it to feel validated أو إنه فعلياً خلاص إنه الواجب علي إنه آكل this entire portion رح أخلصها. Because a lot of times we just block the emotion and because we don't want to feel the guilt. For that part of our brains, we're just basically just doing the motions without feeling the satisfaction, without enjoying the food, and without building the connection between our body and our mind.
I feel like when you allow your children and yourself to indulge in food that may not necessarily be so nutritious, when they do indulge, they have limitations. When you deprive them for so long, when they're allowed to have that food for whatever reason, maybe there's a birthday, a celebration, they're older, they have more agency on their body or whatever, they tend to binge. And that's when there is the unhealthy emotional eatings come to play. So I think it's so important to allow them to make the choice and to give them complete permission, guilt-free, but to also teach them that, yes, you're having it, you're going to enjoy it, but just remember that if you had your nutritious lunch, your nutritious dinner, that also balances things out. And life is what, if not a balance, correct?
Definitely.
Thank you, Dina, for that. I'm going to move on to Qadreya. You spoke about the Dawood Basha, which is something that I'm still thinking about. Halla lunchtime, Arab, soon after this. But I'd love to know more about how you localize your baby food products. How do you approach about localizing Bumblebee, especially here in the UAE, when we have an international flair? We have so many Arab expats, non-Arab expats, people from different cultures, different countries. How do you still manage to have that Emirati flair, if you like, in Bumblebee, but at the same time catering to different cultures?
احنا الفلسفي that I believe in إن to have international menu عشان to cater to everyone. For example مثلا عندنا pancakes. كل حد ياكل pancakes. Everyone. It's international. وكل دولة they put their own touch. You know مثلا Indian culture they like it a bit more savory. American culture they like it more sweet. احنا عندنا مثلا عندنا نفس يحطون نفس المحلة.
صح المحلة.
That will be the Emirati version of it. فإحنا we always experiment of different foods نحطها في kitchen and we test with our kids. وإحنا we have the toughest critics because they're my cousins. فما عندهم filter. They're always, criticizing. They're always like, okay, do this, add this. One way that we do it is, as I mentioned, the Dawood Basha, for example, we have Mexican rice, even though we have internationally, يعني حتى بعد عندنا مثلا الكفتة and الكفتة اللي احنا نسويها, the only thing that's عشان احنا we focus a lot on nutrition, فنحط داخل very very fine vegetables inside, and it's not even noticeable. حتى عندنا مثلا chicken nuggets that we do, chicken nuggets نجيب broccoli. We find it so thin, and يعني it's in the chicken, and the kids don't even notice it. لأن when they're eating it, they're too busy eating the crispy outside. So this is some of the ways that we try.
You also have the dates.
We also have the dates اللي هم برا. Our newest range is the dry snacks. بتشوفون date balls outside. As you know, dates are very Emirati. It's Khaliji. It's something that it's the main staple of our cuisine here. We have the dates, and one thing that we're doing, and so we dates مع cardamom, اللي هو الهيل, and so we dates مع كمون, and so we dates مع chocolate عشان some sweetness for the babies. We're always experimenting. We're always changing our menu to adapt to the various tastes. لأن ما شاء الله هني it's a melting pot of international flavors. So we're always trying to introduce new flavors.
I mean, how lucky are we that we live in a region where we have abundance of this superfood? Dates is such an undermined superfood. It is so crucial that we add it more in our diet, especially that we're living in such a hot country. And I'm glad that you added it in your range. One question, with the increasing number of dietary restrictions, my child can't have gluten, my child can't have corn, can't have egg, can't have so and so. How do you cater to such, not only the fussy eaters, the picky eaters that are in a whole arena on their own, but also with the dietary restrictions, especially that allergies are real and intolerances are real, and we need to cater to that.
Sure. At Bumblebee, we don't. We believe that eating all the foods is the best way to prevention. The more you eat, for example, when you introduce nuts to children when they're small, if you don't have, of course, a family history of any allergens, when you introduce nuts, when you introduce veggies, when you introduce هذا كله when they're young, this is a way for them to stop becoming picky eaters in the future. Also, مثلا, there's تعرفين الفاد, it's always like, حين now it's gluten. Like, for example, now nobody wants to eat gluten. بعدين it was before that, it was nobody wanted to eat fat. And what is technically considered as fat? Avocado is considered as fat. But avocado is a superfood, right? Same thing with olive oil. Agrees.
Even he agrees.
Baby agrees. Same thing with olive oil, So it's just about making the healthier choices. يعني butter gets such a bad rap, but butter, especially natural butter, do you know how it's made? It's just made out of milk. حليب طبيعي. You just mix it and mix it and mix it في البلندر في الوhisker, for 10 minutes, and you get the butter. That's it. And حليب is so nutritious, right? It has calcium, it has everything. So it's just about understanding, the ingredients that they put in your foods, or substituting it with something healthy.
I love that. Mirna, Qadreya was saying, our food is so rich, it's so diverse, especially Arabic food. Like we were talking about different superfoods just by incorporating it in its most simplest form. What is your take on that?
So for me, I think it's, whenever I think of anything nutrition related, I think, what does a human being need and what does a child need in general? So we know we need our proteins, our fats, and our carbohydrates. And we know we need the micronutrients and the macronutrients, right? So if you just look at our food, as Arabic food, let's talk about legumes, let's talk about chickpeas, let's talk about lentils, let's talk about fasulia, like we were talking about, and bami, and all of these legumes and beans are very, very high in carbohydrates and in proteins.
Protein, yes.
And what do you need to what's left is you need the fats.
Yes.
So if you look at it, we can complement it with our healthy fats. You know, olive oil is like the most Arab thing on the planet.
Yeah.
So complement it with the olive oil, and really you've got great meals. And a lot of people think that when it comes down to protein, we need our chicken and our meat and our fish. It's important to have them, but in much smaller amounts than we need everything else. If you look at our foods, you know, a lot of people don't realize that the official health recommendation is that you need 50 to 65% of our adult nutrition to be carbohydrates. Adults.
Yes.
When it comes down to children, it goes up to 75%
Because they burn
need
so
them.
much. Yes.
We need them to grow. So, you know, you've got all of these people that are like, you know, my son is not eating enough yogurt, or my son's not eating enough eggs. Like, so what? You know, really, so
Correct.
what? Are your children eating chickpeas? Are they eating fool and fava beans? Are they eating porridges, for example? Because porridges are something that we've been using for a long time. So if you really look at our cuisine, you're going to find that it gives you everything that you absolutely need. You do not need to look elsewhere. Whether it's for breakfast or lunch or for dinner. يعني حتى we were talking earlier, who was I talking with? They were telling me every time I look up a recipe, they tell me bake a muffin. And نحن العرب مش هالقد we like to bake muffins. And it's true, not all of us like to bake. You know, just look in our kitchens and you'll find that there's everything that you need. So I really want to hone down on this. And the main thing I would say in our Arabic culture is our whole grains. So عندك البرغل والفريكة are so much better than any other grain out there on the planet. They're higher in fiber, which the majority of the world's population doesn't get, and fiber and prebiotics, and they're very important for your gut bacteria, for your immunity, for everything. So it's very, very nutritious and very, very important, and it's 50% of your diet. So you don't have to go to wild rice. You know, you don't have to go to brown rice. People are like, I don't like brown rice. I'm like, okay, so don't have it. We don't really need brown rice. And finally, I'd like to say that in our food, we use a lot of herbs, Hadil. And who else uses in their broth, you know, all of these amazing herbs and all of these amazing spices.
Yes.
In the broth lab, for example, you're using all of these things that no one else uses from Western countries. So I think هيدا اللي نحن بنستخف فيه ورق الغار أو الهيل. These are powerhouses of nutrition. In fact, it's just that the West has not studied them as well because they don't use them, but we do.
And they're not in abundance in that region as it is in our countries.
And what they might think are weeds are actually herbs that we use medicinally, and herbs that we use that improve immunity, and herbs that we use that improve appetite, and herbs that we use that have all of these vitamins and minerals. And in fact, I want to say this, that thyme, أو الزعتر, is one of the highest foods in micronutrients on earth.
Amazing.
Yeah. like حتى نحن وصغار كنا نفكر إنه هي ساندويتش الزعتر ما فيها شيء. ساندويتش الزعتر فيها كتير. They weren't lying. But at the time they didn't know that. Now we know that it's so essential and so important.
I love that. I was actually watching a documentary recently, and they were showcasing different schools and their cafeterias in the canteen, the hot lunch that was offered to the students. And in the States, they showed the worst, really, because the majority of it was fried nuggets, fries, no fruits, no vegetables. But then they showcased Hong Kong, France, Korea. And mind you, all these countries are international, so they have different students from all around the world. And it hit me that we here in our international schools in the UAE, we don't really have that Emirati or Arabic imprint in them, in the cafeteria, sadly. So we'd go into any school, the cafeteria would have the muffin, will have maybe a noodle base, it'll have a simple dish that not necessarily has anything to do with our culture, whether Arabic culture or Emirati. And I actually addressed it to the school once, and they said, give us examples, and I sent them like 70 emails. I was like, oh my God, where do I start? You know, our culture is so rich, our food is so diverse, there's so many things you can implement. But my question to you is, Mirna, in today's world of convenient food, trends, like we were talking, like Dina was saying, with TikTok and all these hypes, how can we reintroduce the nourishing sort of ancestral food that our parents used to raise us on? Because they often take the back seat. And I remember we were talking in the room and we were saying we grew to think what our parents fed us was actually bad. But then we reached to a wise point where we were like, actually, they were 1,000 times better than what they're trying to teach us online. So where did we go wrong? How did we steer away from how we were raised? Are there any specific strategies you recommend to make these food more appealing in the Arab family homes?
So I'm not sure to answer about the schools or at home, but I'll try to combine both. What we can control what we feed at home, and that's very important and essential, of course. So the more we introduce these Arabic foods, the better it is. هلا Hadil, we have a main problem, which is that all of these parents are now on keto diets and low carb diets.
Correct.
And and I think I've been doing counseling for 13 years with picky eaters. And something I've really tried to explain is that if your child is picky, but you're on a diet where you're not having the same foods, they're not going to eat what you want them to. So I've got a lot of people that come to me and they bring the kid and they're like, tell him, he is not قولي له ما عم بياكل خضره انه قولي له انه ما عم بياكل مثلا ليه ما عم بياكل عدس عملت له مجدره I'm like طب انه are you eating مجدره when was the last time you ate مجدره she's like 10 years ago I don't eat مجدره no it's not good for me. They're not having dinner together because the mom and dad are not having dinner to begin with, or maybe they're ordering from out. So children, exactly like Dina was saying, they will model what you're doing. Yes. So the more you have these foods and the more you celebrate them, the better. I have friends, honest to God, very good friends, that have not eaten a stew of mlokhiyeh for more than 10 years. They have been eating the same life. ملوخية is life, exactly. أنا when my mom, هيك a side note, one time told me ما تاكلي ملوخية لأنه عم بترضعي, it's going to give the baby gas. I cried. It was the hormones, but I cried. So the point is that we've got to get them back and really believe that it's good for you, and all of these things that you're seeing online with flat abs, in reality, those are not the healthy people. It's the people that you see around you that are healthier. So number one, model and bring it back and stop acting like rice or bread is going to kill you. It's not. And in schools, exactly what you did, Hadil, talking to the schools, what are we doing these family meetings for? Let's go, and say, this is what we want. And also, I have to say, as a very successful business Arab woman yourself, also creating these solutions. Bumblebee started. But, maybe we need catering companies who are also parents maybe make catering companies that also provide these kinds of foods for our kids. I do a lot of counseling for nurseries and schools, and I send them menus on what to cook, and they've been doing that for a long time, but not everyone has that capacity. So we also need to work together on having a structure for the schools and options for the parents.
Mirna, you yourself founded a tissue concept called Cocoa Wipes, and you're offering also that convenience to moms. I'm really interested in understanding more the intersection between how we're trying to sort of introduce nutrition, eating and weaning babies the right, healthier way, but also how skin irritation, nutritional safety during feeding can be impacted. How does Cocoa Wipes help solve that problem?
So to give a little bit of feedback, both my kids were born with allergies, extreme allergies, and I have allergies myself.
Even Kareem?
Even Kareem.
Yeah.
Kareem was born with a cow's milk protein allergy, and one time I wiped his face with a wet wipe, and it blew up. Like it was all allergy, and at the time I was like, was it my milk? Was it something I ate? Then I stopped eating everything, and it was very catastrophic. And eventually we found out that what he had is just a skin reaction to the wet wipes. 10 years later, I have my daughter Chloe, and Chloe has these horrible diaper rashes. I'm like, what is going on? They're not normal. We're washing for her all the time. And again, it was the wipes. So what I ended up doing is going back to as roots as possible while offering convenience by sourcing extremely clean cotton-only wipes. There's nothing in there.
100% cotton.
100% cotton. There's not a single ingredient. And you can I have water next to it. I just add water and wipe. And that way my kids don't have skin irritations. And something I found with a lot of parents over the years when I do weaning consultations is they come to me and they're like, oh, my baby has allergies to everything. I'm not giving them anything. Etc. And I was like, maybe it's not an allergy to the food. Correct. Maybe it's an allergy to the wipes. So this is kind of where this concept came about. And I think it's very important to highlight that how we clean up for our kids is also really important when it comes down to weaning. So one thing a lot of our Arab parents do is if our kids get dirty, and you're feeding them, it's not even your mom, what do they do?
مسح
بيجوا بيمسحوا لهم انه wipe your face, wipe your hands. They're doing it for you. So also hygiene when it comes down to feeding your kids is very important. If your kids are never going to get their hands dirty, they're going to think that when it is dirty that something is wrong.
Correct.
If their face is not dirty, they're going to think that, oh my God, it always needs to be clean. And this is how we develop sensory issues over time. And that's what I had. I had sensory issues for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think also keeping the kids until the very end to wash for them and then washing for them at the end, not in between. And when you do, using the gentlest possible, least irritating material. So we're not like bothering them.
This is so important because we do tend to think that a lot of the allergies are sourced from the food when it could be skin-like allergic reactions to different chemicals that are either in the soap that we're washing the kids' dishes with, or like you said, the wipes. So thank you for creating Cocoa Wipes.
Thank you.
I think we're running out of time. Thank you to the incredible panelists for being here today, for answering some of the very crucial questions in today's nutrition in the Arab world. I think we all can conclude that when it comes to nutrition, it's not just about food. It is about how we associate emotional eating around food. It's about how we try as much as we can as a community to come together to address these topics one another. If you have any questions, we're going to be here and around, but we will be breaking for lunch very soon. Thank you for coming today.